The day I pinned on my major insignia. My mother slapped me in front of my entire unit. Blood trickled down my chin while the medals on my chest rattled like they were mocking me. They thought I'd cry. Instead, I pressed REC on the pen recorder hidden in my pocket. 3 years of planning finally set in motion. When they eventually knelt on that church floor begging for forgiveness, they finally understood I wasn't seeking revenge for satisfaction. I was reclaiming my right to exist as a human being. My name is Rowan Hale, and I've spent 32 years learning that blood doesn't guarantee love. It just gives people easier access to your jugular. The ceremony hall at Fort Greystone blazed with fluorescent lights that made everyone's dress blues look slightly synthetic. 200 people packed into rows of metal folding chairs, the kind that screech against linoleum when you shift your weight. The air conditioning fought a losing battle against body heat and polyester. I stood at attention on the small stage, feeling the weight of the gold oak leaf clusters in my commander's palm, waiting to replace the silver ones on my shoulders. "Major Rowan Hale," Colonel Torres announced, his voice cutting through the murmur of conversations. "Defense Cyber Response Group's newest field-grade officer." The applause started, polite and measured. I scanned the crowd. Evan Brooks in the third row, giving me a subtle thumbs up. Junior officers from my unit clustered near the back, spouses checking their phones. Then, 20 minutes late as always, my parents pushed through the side door. Greg Hale moved like he owned the room despite arriving late, his contractor's build stuffed into a suit that cost more than most lieutenants made in a month. Monica followed, her heels clicking a staccato rhythm that somehow managed to sound disapproving. They found seats in the reserved family section front row, naturally that I'd hoped would stay empty. "Before we proceed," my mother's voice sliced through the ceremony like a scalpel through skin. "Shouldn't our daughter thank the people who made this possible?" Colonel Torres paused, the oak leaves still in his hand. The room went cemetery quiet. "Mrs. Hale," he said carefully, "we have a program to follow." "Nonsense." Monica stood, smoothing her designer dress. "Family values built this military. Rowan knows what she owes us." She held out a folded paper. "I've prepared something appropriate for her to read." I recognized the paper, her handwriting, her words, the same script she'd forced on me at high school graduation. Taking it would mean reading lies about their support, their sacrifice, their proud parenting. Taking it would mean erasing 12 years of clawing my way up despite them. "No, thank you," I said, voice steady as a radar lock. The slap came faster than I could track muscle memory from years of practice. Monica's palm connected with my left cheek hard enough to snap my head sideways. The sound echoed off the walls like a gunshot. My vision blurred, not from tears but from impact. I tasted copper where my teeth cut the inside of my cheek. The medals on my chest, Air Force Achievement, Meritorious Service, Afghanistan Campaign rattled against each other like wind chimes in a storm. Blood traced a thin line from the corner of my mouth to my chin, and I let it. Let everyone see. "You ungrateful," Monica started, but cameras were already clicking. Lila Ortiz from the local paper had her phone up, recording everything. Someone in the back row gasped. Colonel Torres stepped between us, his face switching from celebration to crisis management in half a second. "Security," he said quietly, but I raised my hand. "It's fine, sir." I wiped the blood with the back of my hand, smearing it across my knuckles. "Family matter." Greg hadn't moved from his chair, just watched with the same expression he wore when evaluating a construction bid, calculating cost versus benefit. Monica's chest heaved, her carefully styled hair starting to fray. "We'll handle this privately," Colonel Torres said, his tone making it an order. "Major Hale, my office after the ceremony." "Of course, sir." The pen recorder in my breast pocket was still running, had been since I'd clicked it walking onto stage. 3 years of preparation, and they'd just given me the opening shot gift-wrapped. The ceremony continued, rushed now. Awkward. Colonel Torres pinned on my oak leaves while my cheek swelled and my mother's handprint darkened from red to purple. The final applause sounded like rain on a tin roof, scattered and uncomfortable. As people filed out, avoiding eye contact, I pulled out my phone. 3 files already uploaded to the cloud, ready to send. Bank statements showing mysterious withdrawals from my college fund. Medical records documenting old bruises with vague explanations. Credit reports showing accounts I'd never opened. I typed a message to Evan. Phase 1 initiated. They took the bait. His response came immediately. Recording clear. Ortiz got everything. You okay? I looked at my reflection in my phone's black screen. Blood on my chin. Bruise blooming across my cheek. Major's oak leaves gleaming on my shoulders. Never better, I typed back. Time to return the favor. 3 years of evidence lived in encrypted folders on drives scattered across 5 different locations. Each file meticulously labeled, cross-referenced, backed up. I'd learned operational security in Afghanistan, but the real battlefield had always been the house I grew up in. It started at University of Colorado, freshman year. I'd saved $12,000 working double shifts at a warehouse, bleeding through work gloves to afford tuition. One October morning, the bursar's office called payment bounced. The account was empty. When I confronted my parents, Greg laughed like I'd told a joke. Investment opportunity, he'd said, cutting into his steak at dinner. Your college fund's making real money now, not sitting dead in some savings account. The investment was his failing construction business. The real money never materialized. I enlisted 2 weeks later. It was that, or drop out. Monica had been smoother. Sweetheart, just sign here. She'd cooed during my basic training graduation, sliding papers between photos and hugs. Power of attorney, in case of deployment. Standard family protection. Standard family protection that opened 14 credit cards in my name. Maxed them out on Greg's business expenses, Monica's shopping sprees, their mortgage payments when contracts dried up. I discovered it all during my security clearance review for DCRG. 40,000 in debt I didn't know existed, credit score destroyed, my career nearly torpedoed before it started. Family helps family, Monica always said when I tried to object. Don't be selfish, Rowan. We sacrificed everything for you. Their sacrifices, the bruises hidden under long sleeves, explained away as training accidents. The concussion from Greg's backhand when I refused to co-sign a loan, documented as a fall downstairs. The cigarette burn on my shoulder from Monica's accident when I wouldn't hand over my deployment pay, scarred over but still visible in the right light. Every incident carefully documented in military medical records, vague enough to avoid mandatory reporting, detailed enough to establish a pattern. Evan taught me that how to build a chain of evidence that would hold up in court. Digital forensics is like archaeology, he'd explained, helping me recover deleted emails from my parents' computer during a visit home. Every action leaves traces. You just need to know where to dig. We found gold in those traces. Emails between Monica and her sister bragging about the stupid girl funding our retirement. Greg's messages to his lawyer asking about legal ways to access military death benefits. The crown jewel, Monica's draft email, never sent, detailing how she'd forged my signature on loan documents. I photographed everything, recorded conversations with the pen that looked like standard military issue, built financial spreadsheets showing every dollar they'd stolen, created timelines correlating their cash problems with my mysterious new debts. The preparation consumed me. After 12-hour shifts securing DoD networks, I'd spend 6 more hours securing my own future, learning financial law, fraud statutes, identity theft regulations, setting up monitoring on my credit, freezing accounts, establishing paper trails. The hardest part was pretending nothing had changed. Sunday dinners where they'd complain about money problems while wearing jewelry bought with my credit. Holiday visits where Monica would cry about being a neglected mother between reminders that good daughters don't abandon family. Greg's lectures about respect and gratitude, delivered with hands that had left bruises shaped like fingerprints. I smiled through it all, nodded, played the dutiful daughter while building my case. Then, 6 months ago, The notification arrived a $320,000 construction loan application using my Social Security number, Monica's signature on the authorization form, claiming to be me. The loan officer called to verify employment. They'd listed me as CEO of Greg's company. That night, I sat in my apartment at 245 A, Mem, staring at the loan documents, my service weapon locked in its safe, calling like a siren, the easy solution, the permanent one. Instead, I called Evan. They're escalating, I told him. Then we escalate back, he said, but legally, thoroughly, in a way that breaks them without breaking you. We spent the next 6 hours planning. By dawn, we had a strategy that would use their own weapons against them: reputation, community standing, the image they'd murdered me to maintain. Looking back now, with my mother's handprint still throbbing on my cheek and blood drying on my uniform, I realized they'd given me the perfect opening: public assault, documented by a journalist, in front of witnesses. They thought they still owned me. They were about to learn that ownership had been revoked. The Eastport County District Attorney's office smelled like old coffee and photocopier toner. Assistant District Attorney Layla Rowan, no relation, despite the shared last name, spread my evidence across her conference table like she was planning a military campaign, which, in a way, she was. Identity theft, wire fraud, forgery, assault and battery. She counted off on her fingers. Your parents built quite the resume. I'd brought everything. 3 years of documentation in chronological order, indexed and tabbed. Financial records highlighted in yellow for theft, blue for fraud, green for forgery. Medical records with corresponding photographs. The pen recording from yesterday's ceremony. Monica's voice, crystal clear. You ungrateful, followed by the sharp crack of impact. The assault's a misdemeanor, Layla continued, adjusting her reading glasses. But combined with the financial crimes, we're looking at felony charges. The pattern of abuse strengthens everything. I don't want them in prison, I said, surprising her. I want them exposed. She leaned back, studying me. Revenge through humiliation. Justice through accountability. There's a difference. Over the next 2 hours, we mapped out the legal battlefield. Criminal charges would be held in reserve leverage for the civil case, restitution for the stolen funds, penalties for the fraud, public acknowledgement of their crimes. We'll need more than paper, Layla said. Juries like stories, not spreadsheets. Then we give them one. I pulled out my phone, showed her Lila Ortiz's contact, local journalist who filmed the assault. She's hungry for a bigger story. The meeting with Lila happened that afternoon at a coffee shop downtown. She arrived with a laptop and the eager look of someone who'd just found their Pulitzer attempt. Military major assaulted by mother at promotion ceremony, she said, sliding her phone across the table. The video was brutal in its clarity, Monica's wind-up, the impact, my head snapping sideways, blood visible even from the camera's distance. It's already got 50,000 views locally. That's the headline, I said. Here's the story. I gave her everything she could legally report: the identity theft, the fraud, the systematic abuse, documents to verify, sources to contact. Evan had agreed to go on record about helping me discover the digital evidence. This isn't just about me, I explained. Greg's construction company has other victims. Employees paid under the table, clients overcharged, tax evasion that would make the IRS salivate. Lila's eyes gleamed. When do you want this to run? Sunday edition, after their church service, before the evening news picks it up. She nodded, already typing notes. What about your military career? This could affect. My command already knows. I disclosed everything this morning. Colonel Torres had listened to my report with the stone-faced expression of someone calculating damage control. In the end, he'd offered support fraud victims who report weren't punished, especially when they'd done everything right. That evening, I sat with Evan in his home office, surrounded by monitors showing financial records, legal databases, and social media feeds. We were building what he called the dossier, a comprehensive timeline of 12 years of abuse and theft. Here, He pointed to a transaction from 6 years ago. They used your SSN to get a business credit line, then paid it off with money from another fraudulent account. Classic money laundering. Each transaction got its own page date, amount, documentation, and impact on my credit. The forged signatures were analyzed and compared. Monica had gotten sloppy over time, her fake version of my handwriting evolving away from the original. "This is beautiful," Evan said, admiring the forensic completeness. Prosecutors dream of cases this well documented. The final piece came together when I contacted Pastor Whitlock. He agreed to meet me at the church at 9:30 p.m. After evening services ended, the sanctuary felt different in darkness, only the eternal flame and exit signs providing light. "I need to tell you about Greg and Monica Hale," I began. He listened without interrupting as I laid out the truth. The theft, the abuse, the assault at my promotion. His face went through a journeyed disbelief, anger, sorrow. "They just donated $50,000 to the building fund," he said quietly. "Money stolen using my identity." He stood, walked to the altar, knelt for a long moment. When he rose, his expression had hardened into something I'd never seen before. "There's a community dinner next Saturday," he said, "to honor our benefactors. The Hales are expecting to be celebrated." "Perfect," I said. He looked at me sharply. "You're planning something." "Justice, pastor, biblical justice, the kind where the truth sets everyone free." He was quiet for a moment. "I'll need to pray on this. Pray fast. The newspaper story runs Sunday morning." As I left the church, my phone buzzed. Greg had sent a text. "Your mother's upset. You'll apologize at dinner Saturday." I typed back, "I'll be there." 3 tools now sharpened and ready: law, media, and faith. The trap was set. All that remained was to close it. The church fellowship hall glowed with warm light from the overhead chandeliers, donated by my parents with money that wasn't theirs. Round tables covered in white cloth held centerpieces of artificial flowers, Monica's choice, because real ones were wastefully temporary. The smell of pot roast and green beans hung thick in the air. I arrived at 6:15 p.m., precisely on time. Evan sat 3 tables away, ostensibly attending as a community member, his phone positioned to record. The Hales commanded the head table, naturally, Greg holding court with his contractor buddies while Monica preened for the church ladies. "Rowan." Monica's voice carried across the room, performatively maternal. "Come sit with your family." The bruise on my cheek had faded to yellow-green, but under the fluorescent lights, it was still visible. Several people noticed, their conversations stuttering to stops. I took my assigned seat between my parents, feeling like a lamb between wolves. "You'll sign this after grace," Monica whispered, sliding a manila envelope toward me. A simple agreement that the promotion incident was a misunderstanding. I glanced at the document, legal language absolving them of assault, fraud, and any financial disputes arising from familiar support. At the bottom, a line mentioning $50,000 for future grandchildren's education. A bribe disguised as generosity. "Of course, Mother," I said, setting it aside. Pastor Whitlock stood to begin the blessing. As heads bowed, Evan moved. He'd practiced this with me, the digital override he'd installed on Greg's office safe during a previous family dinner when I'd kept them distracted. The newer model electronic locks had a vulnerability he'd discovered, a backdoor maintenance code that manufacturers never changed. Through my peripheral vision, I watched him slip into the hallway toward Greg's church office. He kept a second safe there for charitable donations he was managing. 60 seconds was all he needed. "Amen," the congregation chorused. Greg immediately launched into his benefactor speech, standing with the practiced ease of someone who'd bought his way onto many stages. "Community, faith, and family," he intoned. "These are the pillars that support everything we build." Evan returned, giving me the slightest nod. Success. Dinner continued with its parade of false piety. Monica told the story of my promotion, edited to paint her as the proud mother overwhelmed by emotion. Sometimes love just overflows, she said, and several people actually nodded sympathetically. My phone vibrated. Evan's text. Gold mine. Ledger shows 12 accounts in your name. Photos secured. As dessert arrived, sheet cake with congratulations to our generous donors in green frosting, Pastor Whitlock stood again. Before we celebrate the Hale's contribution, he said, his voice carrying an edge I'd never heard before, I'd like to invite their daughter, Major Rowan Hale, to share a prayer. The room turned to me. This wasn't planned, but I saw the opportunity. I stood, took the microphone. Thank you, Pastor. I looked directly at my parents. I'd like to pray for those who strike their children in anger, for those who steal from the ones they claim to love, for those who bear false witness even in God's house. The room went tomb silent. I pray, I continued, voice steady as a sniper's breathing, that they find the courage to confess their sins, return what they've stolen, and seek forgiveness not just from God, but from those they've wronged. Greg's face had gone purple. Monica's hand gripped her butter knife like a weapon. Amen, I finished, setting down the microphone. What the hell are you doing? Greg hissed, low enough that only our table heard. Telling the truth, I replied, pulling out the ledger pages Evan had photographed. Like this truth, 12 credit accounts opened in my name. Systematic fraud totaling over $300,000. Monica lunged for the papers, but I pulled them back. Several nearby tables were openly staring now. Sign the agreement, she snarled. Now! I have a counteroffer. I placed my own document on the table. Full confession, public apology, complete restitution plus interest, and mandatory counseling. Sign it, or the district attorney gets everything Monday morning. You ungrateful. Greg started to stand, fist clenched. Mr. Hale, Pastor Whitlock appeared at his shoulder. Perhaps we should continue this in my office. All of us. The walk to the pastor's office felt like a funeral procession. Once inside, Evan produced the full evidence, the complete ledger, photographs of forged documents, even receipts for purchases made with my stolen identity. The newspaper story runs tomorrow, I informed them, but it doesn't have to include criminal charges. That depends on what happens next. Monica laughed, bitter and sharp. You think you've won? We made you. Everything you are. Everything I am. I cut her off. I built despite you. And now, you're going to acknowledge that publicly. Greg slammed his hand on the pastor's desk. I'm not groveling to my own daughter. Then you're going to prison, I said simply. Your choice. Pastor Whitlock spoke into the silence. The Hales will make their confession next Sunday, during service, before the entire congregation. I won't kneel, Monica spat. You will, I said, standing to leave. Because the alternative is orange jumpsuits and federal charges. You have 1 week to decide which knees hurt less, the ones that bend in apology, or the ones that bend in a jail cell. I walked out, leaving them with the wreckage of their carefully constructed lies. Behind me, I heard Monica start to sob, not from remorse, but from rage. The trap hadn't just closed. It had shattered everything they'd built on the foundation of my suffering. Sunday morning broke gray and drizzling, perfect weather for destruction. At 7:05 a.m., the Eastport Gazette's website updated with Lila Ortiz's investigation. The headline ran in bold, "Decorated military officer exposes years of parental fraud and abuse." My phone exploded with notifications before I'd finished my coffee. The video of Monica slapping me had been embedded at the top, followed by 3,000 words of meticulously documented financial crimes. Lila had done her homework interviews with former employees Greg had stiffed, clients he'd overcharged, even a bankruptcy attorney who confirmed the pattern of fraud. By 8:30 a.m., the story had been shared 1,200 times on local social media. The comments section became a battlefield. Half expressed outrage at my parents. The other half accused me of being an ungrateful daughter airing family business. Monica's church friends launched a coordinated defense, but the evidence was overwhelming. I dressed carefully for the Storm Class A uniform, every medal properly placed. If they wanted to paint me as the villain, they'd have to do it while I wore the symbols of service they'd tried to steal from me. DCRG headquarters was my first stop. Colonel Torres had called an emergency meeting, and I found myself facing a room of senior officers, legal counsel, and public affairs specialists. Major Hale, Torres began, his expression unreadable. This situation has escalated beyond a family dispute. Sir, I've documented everything. My actions have been legal and— We're not questioning your actions, he interrupted. We're offering support. The military takes care of its own, especially when they're victims of fraud. The legal officer, Captain Martinez, slid a folder across the table. We've had JAG review your case. The forensic evidence Mr. Brooks helped you compile is admissible. We're prepared to provide official statements confirming the identity theft affected your security clearance process. Additionally, the public affairs major added, we're releasing a statement supporting you as a victim of financial crimes who followed proper reporting protocols. Your career is protected. Major. Relief flooded through me like water breaking a dam. I'd been prepared to fight this battle alone, but my command had my six. Greg called while I was leaving base, his number appearing on my phone like a warning flare. I let it ring through to voicemail, then listened. You've destroyed us. 40 years building our reputation, and you burned it down for what revenge your mother is having a nervous breakdown. The business phone won't stop ringing, clients canceling contracts, suppliers demanding immediate payment. You want us to grovel, fine, but this ends now. Monica's call came an hour later, her voice different, smaller, fractured. The country club revoked our membership, said we're under criminal investigation. Margaret Thompson, who I've known for 20 years, crossed the street to avoid me. Is this what you wanted to see us destroyed? No, I said, finally answering. I wanted you to stop. You never did. The Eastport Business Association released a statement at 2 p.m., distancing themselves from Greg's construction company. 3 major contracts were suspended pending investigation. His company's Facebook page filled with 1-star reviews and demands for refunds, but the real blow came from an unexpected source. 3 other victims came forward, employees and subcontractors who'd been paid in cash to avoid taxes, their stories adding weight to the pattern of fraud. 1. A military veteran named James had lost his house when Greg refused to pay for completed work. Evan texted me screenshots of the local Facebook groups. The narrative was shifting. Initial sympathy for my parents crumbled as more evidence surfaced. Someone had found court records of Greg's previous bankruptcy, hidden behind shell companies. Another discovered Monica's old social media posts bragging about expensive purchases while crying poverty at church fundraisers. Pastor Whitlock called at 4:15 p.m. Your parents have agreed to the public confession. They had no choice. Several church board members threatened to pursue charges for the fraudulent donations. When, next Sunday, morning service, the district attorney will be present, along with media. Ada Layla Rowan confirmed it an hour later. They've agreed to full restitution, public apology, and community service. In exchange, we'll recommend probation instead of prison time. But Rowan, she paused, they want conditions, such as a meeting tomorrow. They'll sign everything, but they want 5 minutes to speak to you alone first. The trap was working, but wounded animals were dangerous. Fine, your office, with security present. That evening, as the sun set behind storm clouds, I sat in my apartment watching the local news cover the story. They'd interviewed fellow officers who called me a person of absolute integrity. They'd found my deployment records, my commendations, the volunteer work I'd done with veteran families. Then they showed my parents' house reporters camped outside, Greg's company trucks being repossessed in the background, Monica's silhouette hiding behind drawn curtains. I'd won the public battle. Tomorrow, I'd finish the war. My phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. You think you've destroyed them, but you've just revealed yourself. No one will ever trust someone who betrays family. Watch your back. Major. I deleted it and poured another coffee. Let them threaten. I had receipts for everything, including their souls. The conference room at the district attorney's office felt smaller with my parents in it, like their rage and desperation consumed all the oxygen. Greg sat hunched forward, his contractor's hands clenched on the table. Monica held herself rigid, designer sunglasses failing to hide eyes swollen from crying or screaming or both. Ada Layla Rowan laid out the terms like a battlefield medic listing injuries. Full confession, public apology, complete restitution of $347,000 plus interest and penalties, community service 1,000 hours each, mandatory anger management and family counseling. Violation of any terms triggers immediate prosecution for the maximum sentences. This is extortion, Greg growled. This is mercy, Layla countered. Federal fraud charges carry 20 years, each. I sat across from them, Evan beside me with his laptop open to the evidence files. The pen recorder clicked on in my pocket, always recording, always protecting. You wanted 5 minutes, I said. Clock's running. Monica removed her sunglasses, revealing eyes mapped with broken blood vessels. You were an accident, she said, voice flat. Did you know that pregnant at 23, married at gunpoint to save face? Every dream I had died when you were born? So you decided to kill mine in return. We gave you everything. Greg slammed the table. Private school, dance lessons, college funds, that you stole back with interest. You owed us, Monica hissed, for ruining our lives, for existing, for being born. I leaned forward. That's your justification for fraud, for beating me, because I had the audacity to exist. Evan pushed his laptop toward them, displaying a spreadsheet. Every transaction tracked, including the $50,000 church donation traced to accounts opened in Rowan's name. The IRS has been notified. Greg's face went gray. Tax fraud on top of identity theft, the charges were multiplying like cancer cells. Here's what's going to happen, I said, producing my own document. You'll sign this comprehensive confession. You'll detail every crime, every theft, every assault. You'll read it publicly during Sunday service. You'll kneel, yes, Mother, kneel and ask for forgiveness, not just from me, but from every person you've defrauded. I won't, Monica started, or you'll go to prison. I pulled out photographs Evan had found in the safe Monica with another man, Greg's second set of books for the business, evidence of affairs and crimes that went beyond what they'd done to me. And these become public. Your choice. The silence stretched like a noose tightening. Finally, Greg spoke, voice broken. You're not our daughter anymore. I never was. I was your ATM, your punching bag, your scapegoat. Now I'm your judge. I stood. Sign, or don't. Either way, justice happens Sunday. Monica grabbed the pen like it was a knife, scrawling her signature with enough force to tear through to the second page. Greg followed, his name barely legible through his shaking. The kneeling, Monica said, not looking up. Is that really necessary? You made me bleed in front of my entire unit, I replied. Kneeling is kindness compared to what you deserve. Layla collected the signed documents, made copies, had them notarized by her assistant. Everything legal, binding, irreversible. Sunday, 10 service, she instructed. Don't be late. The media will be there, including national outlets now. This story's gone viral. As we prepared to leave, Monica stood suddenly. $300,000. How are we supposed to pay that? Sell the house you bought with my credit, I suggested. Liquidate the business built on fraud. Or declare bankruptcy again and live with the consequences. We'll be ruined, Greg whispered. You ruined yourselves. I'm just documenting it. We left them there, two predators defanged and caged. In the hallway, Evan checked his phone and whistled low. The story's been picked up by military news networks, and Rowan James, the veteran Greg screwed over. He's started a GoFundMe for other victims. It's already at $30,000. Justice was snowballing beyond my control now. gathering mass and speed. That evening, I met with Pastor Whitlock to review the Sunday program. He showed me the modified service bulletin the confession would happen after the opening hymns, before the sermon titled Truth and Redemption. "I've had 17 families threaten to leave the church if we go through with this," he admitted. "And if you don't, then I'm complicit in their lies." He looked older than his 60 years. "Your parents were pillars of this community, Rowan. Watching them fall, it's shaking everyone's faith. Faith built on lies deserves to be shaken." He nodded slowly. "I've arranged for security. Things could get volatile." "I'm not worried about violence," I said. "They're cowards. Cowards don't fight in the open, they abuse in private, steal in shadows. Sunday puts them in the light." "And you," he asked, "what does Sunday give you?" I thought about it, really considered the question. Freedom, from pretending they were parents, from protecting their reputation, from carrying their sins. Forgiveness. That's between them and God. I'm just here for justice. As I drove home, my phone buzzed with a text from Monica. "I should have aborted you." I screenshotted it, added it to the evidence file, and texted back, "See you Sunday, Mother." The altar was set. The congregation was gathering. All that remained was the sacrifice. Sunday arrived with clear skies and a crowd that overflowed the church parking lot. News vans lined the street like military vehicles at a checkpoint. I stood at the back entrance watching people file in, congregation members, reporters, curious strangers drawn by viral video and scandal. Inside, every pew was packed. Leila Ortiz had her camera positioned for the perfect angle. Ada Layla Rowan sat in the third row with a court reporter. Colonel Torres had come in full dress uniform, bringing 2 other officers from DCRG as a show of support. Evan saved me a seat on the aisle, 6th row, close enough to see everything, far enough to avoid the splash zone of humiliation. At 9:58 a.m., my parents entered through the side door. Greg wore his best suit, the one he saved for funerals. Monica had chosen black, like she was mourning her reputation. They walked to the front, where Pastor Whitlock had placed 2 chairs facing the congregation. The opening hymn ended. Pastor Whitlock stepped to the pulpit. "Before today's sermon, we have a matter of confession and reconciliation to address." Greg stood first, pulling index cards from his pocket with shaking hands. The microphone picked up every tremor in his voice. "I stand before you to confess my sins," he began, then stopped, swallowing hard. "I have stolen. I have lied. I have beaten my daughter and justified it as discipline. I have committed fraud, identity theft, and tax evasion." Gasps rippled through the congregation. Someone in the back started crying. Greg continued, listing specific amounts, dates, crimes. "I stole $347,000 using my daughter's identity. I assaulted her when she was 22, 25, 28, and multiple times between. I built my business on lies and theft." His voice cracked. Tears ran down his face, real ones, though I couldn't tell if they were from shame or self-pity. "I ask forgiveness from God, from this community, and from my daughter, Major Rowan Hale, whom I failed as a father in every possible way." Then, slowly, like his knees were mechanical joints requiring oil, Greg knelt. The sound of his kneecaps hitting the floor echoed through the sanctuary. Monica stood next. No cards for her, she'd memorized her confession like lines in a play she never wanted to perform. "I am guilty," she said, voice carrying despite its whisper-thin quality. "I forged documents. I stole from my daughter's future to fund my present. I manipulated, gaslit, and emotionally tortured the child I was supposed to protect." She paused, scanning the crowd until she found me. Our eyes locked. "Last Monday, I slapped my daughter at her promotion ceremony. It wasn't the first time I've hit her. It was simply the first time you all saw it." The sanctuary was tomb silent except for the scratch of the court reporter's keys. I told her she was unwanted, a mistake, a burden. I made her believe she owed us for being born. Every crime Greg confessed to, I enabled or participated in. I am not a victim. I am a perpetrator. Monica's knees began to bend, but she fought it, body rigid with resistance. Pastor Whitlock stepped forward, placed a hand on her shoulder, gentle but firm. She collapsed rather than knelt, ending up on both knees with her head bowed. "We ask," Greg said from his knees, "for forgiveness we don't deserve. We promise restitution we can barely afford. We submit to justice we've earned." Pastor Whitlock nodded to me. This was my moment, choreographed but unscripted. I stood, walked to the front, stopped 3 feet from where they knelt. The entire room held its breath. "I forgive you," I said, my voice carrying clear and strong. "As human beings who lost their way, but forgiveness doesn't erase consequences. You'll pay back every dollar. You'll serve every hour of community service. You'll attend every counseling session." I looked down at them 2 people who'd terrorized me for 32 years, reduced to shapes on their knees. "But know this, you're not my parents anymore. Parents protect. Parents provide without stealing. Parents love without conditions. You were DNA donors who happened to live in the same house." Monica looked up, mascara painting black rivers down her cheeks. "Rowan, please." "My name," I said, "is Major Hale. You haven't earned the right to use my first name." I turned to face the congregation, seeing shock, sympathy, judgment, and awe mixed across hundreds of faces. "This isn't about revenge," I announced. "It's about truth. For 32 years, this community believed a lie. Now you know reality. What you do with that knowledge is your choice." I walked back to my seat. Passing faces, I recognized teachers who'd questioned my bruises but accepted my parents' explanations, neighbors who'd witnessed arguments but minded their own business, church members who'd praised my parents' generosity while I paid for it in blood and debt. Pastor Whitlock helped my parents to their feet. They returned to their seats, smaller somehow, like confession had physically diminished them. The sermon that followed blurred past. All I remember was the title Truth and Redemption. But redemption wasn't mine to give. That was between them and whatever God might still listen to parents who knelt only when forced. As the service ended, Ada Layla Rowan stood. "Mr. and Mrs. Hale, please see me to finalize the legal arrangements." They walked out through a sea of turned backs and averted eyes. The community that had once celebrated them now shunned them with biblical thoroughness. I stood to leave, but Colonel Torres intercepted me. "Outstanding moral courage, Major!" "Just doing what needed to be done, sir." "No," he said firmly. "You did what was right. There's a difference." Outside, the news crews descended, but I pushed through without comment. The story was complete. The truth was public. The punishment was proceeding. My parents had finally paid the price for their sins, not with money, but with the only currency they truly valued, their reputation, ground to dust beneath their own knees. The church parking lot emptied slowly, leaving only a few cars and the lingering weight of what had just occurred. I stood by my vehicle, holding 2 sealed envelopes, the final moves in a game 3 years in the making. Greg and Monica emerged from their meeting with Ada Layla Rowan, looking like survivors of a bombing. They walked toward their car, but I intercepted them, extending the envelopes. "Your payment schedules," I said, voice flat as a military dispatch. "Restitution installments, community service assignments, mandatory counseling sessions, miss one, just one, and the criminal charges activate." Greg took his envelope with a hand that trembled like autumn leaves. 300,000. We'll lose everything." "You already did. This just makes it official." Monica stared at her envelope without taking it. "You've won. Is that what you want to hear? You've destroyed us completely." "No," I corrected. "You destroyed yourselves. I just documented it." I placed her envelope on their car hood. "The counseling starts Tuesday. Dr. Sarah Kramer, specialist in family trauma and abuse. Maybe she can find whatever humanity you buried under all that greed. We're your parents, Monica whispered, a last desperate play of a card that had long expired. My parents died the day you chose money over me. You're just two criminals I happen to share DNA with. Shh! I reached into my pocket, pulled out the pen recorder that had captured everything, 3 years of evidence, their confession, this final moment. I set it on the church steps, its red light still blinking. It's over, I said. No more recording. No more evidence gathering. No more looking over my shoulder. You have your sentence. Serve it. The silence stretched between us like a chasm too wide to bridge. Finally, Greg spoke. Was any of it real? Any moment where you actually loved us? I thought about lying, about leaving them that comfort, but they'd had 32 years of comfortable lies. I loved the parents I wished you were, but those people never existed. I walked to my car without looking back. In the rearview mirror, I saw them standing in the empty parking lot, 2 figures growing smaller with distance, holding envelopes that contained their future of court-ordered payments and mandated apologies to other victims. Evan was waiting at my apartment with coffee and silence, the kind of friend who knew when words weren't needed. We sat on my balcony watching the sunset over Fort Greystone, the base where I'd built a career despite their sabotage. Any regrets? He finally asked. No, I said, and meant it. Regret implies I had better choices. I didn't. They forced this path the day they decided I was a resource to exploit instead of a daughter to love. My phone buzzed with messages support from fellow officers, interview requests from national media, a formal commendation from Colonel Torres for exceptional integrity under personal duress. I ignored them all. The victory wasn't in the accolades, it was in the silence where their chaos used to live. That night, I stood in my bedroom, looking at the boxes of evidence I'd accumulated. 3 years of receipts, recordings, photographs, documents, proof of their crimes, but also proof of my survival. Tomorrow, I'd hand it all to Layla for permanent record. Tonight, it was still mine, the paper trail of my liberation. I picked up a photo from the top of one box, my promotion ceremony, moments before the slap. In it, I'm smiling, unaware of what's coming but prepared nonetheless. The pen recorder already running, the trap already set. 3 years of planning crystallized in that moment when Monica's hand met my cheek. They thought they'd broken me with that slap. Instead, they'd freed me. Freed me from pretending they were parents worth protecting. Freed me from carrying their secrets. Freed me from the fiction that blood creates obligation. I threw the photo back in the box. Tomorrow, the evidence would become legal record. My parents would begin their payments, their service, their counseling. The other victims would receive restitution. The community would heal or fracture as it chose. But tonight, for the first time in my life, I was just Rowan Hale, not their daughter. Not their victim, not their ATM or punching bag or scapegoat, just a major who'd completed her mission. I closed the evidence box and sealed it with tape. The war was over. They'd lost more than money or reputation, they'd lost the power to hurt me. And that loss was permanent, irreversible, absolute. I didn't leave that church as a victor. I left as an officer who'd completed her duty. And the duty was this: to force those who'd struck me before the world to speak my name correctly, not as property, not as prey, but as a person who demanded justice, and got it. Thank you for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're hearing this from. Drop a comment and let's connect. If this story resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and share your thoughts below. Your perspectives make these stories richer for everyone.